The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Shalom and welcome to the Synagogue. This is a podcast for consenting adults for information, education, and entertainment on BDSM, sexuality, and all things related. If you're not a legal, enthusiastically consenting adult, then
pick up the needle, press pause, or turn the radio off.
For those who remain, now might be a good time to switch to your headphones.
Welcome to the Synagogue. I am your host, and they call me the Rabbi.
Pretty fly for a rabbi.
I put the sin in synagogue, and I am a cisgender, ambimorous, gynosexual, sadistic, bratty daddy doll. Sex therapist by day, kink educator by night, and in both these roles, I help people make their kink a religious experience. While I am a mental health professional, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a replacement for therapy. Seek out the assistance of a trained professional for help with your specific situation. Hosting with me today is my partner, my ADHD squirrel wrangler, my submissive, my brat, my pony, or just my little pony. The Abbott to my Costello. Little bit.
Aww.
This is episode number 22. And with us today is Hardy Haberman to talk to us about owning your kink, living with authenticity in a vanilla world. Should you keep your kink in the closet? Should you come out? To who and when and what are the benefits? More importantly, what are the hazards? Exploring these questions and more lead to living authentically. Authenticity does not mean parading your kink down Main Street, but it does mean thoughtful self-examination and coming to terms with it. This discussion will help kinky folk better decide how to negotiate their path in a predominantly vanilla world. But first, a word from our sponsors. Longtime LGBT activist and member of the leather community since the mid-1970s. He's author of several books on kink and related subjects, including The Family Jewels, A Guide to Male Genital Play, and Torment, published by Greenery Press. He has received numerous awards, including the Leather Leadership Award from the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, the Jack Stice Memorial Award at South Plains LeatherFest, and the Marcus Hernandez Lifetime Achievement Award at Pantheon of Leather. Hardy is a columnist for the Dallas Voice, digital experience manager for the Cathedral of Hope, and is former chairperson on the board of directors of the Woodhull Freedom Foundation in Washington, D.C. He lives in Dallas, where he and his boy celebrated 29 years together as partners in play and life. Thank you for being here in the Synagogue. Let's talk about owning your kink, living with authenticity in a vanilla world.
Welcome. Glad you can join us.
I'm glad to be here. This is a topic that I get asked to talk about a lot, and it's something that I've always felt was. I never felt I had any problem with it, but I found out sometimes I do. It just depends. I came out as gay when I was 18, and ever since then I've never gone back in the closet. And so the idea of living authentically, being kinky, I never hid being kinky. It has occasionally gotten me some interesting questions, but I've been very blessed that I have not ended up having it prevent me from doing anything. I do know there are a lot of people that can't do that. They just can't be out. Mm-hmm. But I think authenticity is a real important thing. And that, to me, the simplest definition is that our insides match our outsides. We're more or less transparent, meaning we fearlessly embrace all that we are. I've got a quote by James Baldwin I love. He says, "Love takes off the masks that we fear we cannot live without and know we cannot live within." That's a pretty much the way I come at it. So I think a lot of what people have struggled with is old tapes. And old tapes could be the voices of parents that rightly or wrongly tell you who you are, who you were, and how you're supposed to live. It's also part of a parent's job, but sometimes those voices can be really toxic.
Sure.
And I think identifying those old tapes for you is really, really important.
Okay.
So I'm trying not to lecture.
Oh no, you're fine. You're quite all right. It's it's one of those things that
I got you.
You mentioned parents giving like the old tapes and creating guilt. It just kind of makes you reflect as to who's.
Well, yeah, and it also the whole guilt thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Having been raised Jewish, I understand it very well.
Raised Catholics, so I get it too.
No, Catholics have shame. That's a whole different thing.
Well,
That you can go and get forgiven. Guilt you live with the rest of your life. But, I think a lot of people have trouble figuring out where their kink and their vanilla lives cross over. And I think if you're going to live authentically, you're going to have to mold them together. Doesn't mean you have to dress in leather and go to your job, but you can't totally ignore that side of your life. It's sometimes a lack of self-awareness. We don't even know there's a problem. We fear people won't like us who we are in general because of our MS, leather, BDSM, whatever. People fear they won't fit in. Perhaps they don't adhere to a gender binary or a sexual role. They fear not fitting in the kink community. The kink is more or less, my kink is more extreme than yours. There's that kind of thing. There's a lot of kink shaming in the kink community, which is I was surprised at when I started looking at it. And I think another reason people are afraid to live authentically is they're afraid of being judged. They're stuck in these roles. We feel if we're going to be a submissive, we have to be this certain way, and if we're going to be dominant, we have to be a certain way. And in reality, there really isn't any one way to do that. That has to do with the way the way you brew your life. It's an internal conversation you need to have, but it's also the way you and the people you interact with interact. I don't think rigid roles serve anybody very well. I got asked that on FetLife and those Ask Me Anything questions. What have you learned in your journey? They call living a journey now. Mm-hmm. And I said that rigid roles really don't serve me very well. And that could be top, bottom, but it could also be roles as far as, sexuality or sexual identity. I think those kind of roles sometimes really inhibit us and keep us from living who we really are. I used to consider myself gay, but when I'm in the dungeon, I play with women sometimes. I play with men. I play with transgender people. I began adopting the word queer about 20 years ago and describing myself as queer because I think it's more accurate. I know we reclaimed LGBTQ community, or before it was Q community, reclaimed the word queer back in the 70s and 80s. But I think we need to reclaim it in the kink community as well.
Sure.
I was going to say your comment about starting off as stating that you're gay, and as you've gone on of being now identifying as more queer, got me thinking of a conversation that I've had with somebody else who said that being more authentic and just self-identifying things, they said that should be more fluid and we should be more flexible to it, because what might fit you one day may not fit you another as we grow, evolve, and change. And we should consider just lots of parts of ourself, not just how we identify sexually, but kinky on more of a spectrum.
It is a spectrum, and I don't think one thing I've noticed in our community up until recently is we've been balkanizing. We've sort of been separating. Okay, these people are here riggers, and these people over here are spankos, and these people are littles, and these people are this, and we've all got these little tiny subgroups. And sometimes I think we lose sight of the big picture. In the big picture, if you look at the way society looks at us, we're just all weird, you know. Yeah. And they wouldn't understand the difference between a spanko and a rigger, or somebody who's into bondage but's into rigging or into whatever, or who considers himself leather but not kink, or kink but not leather. These are things that this is navel gazing for us, I think, as a community. We do a lot of that. And though introspection is a good idea, at some point it becomes debilitating. And I will tell you, as we go forward into this next 4 years, we're going to need to have some unity.
Sure.
Because we're going to be the next target. I mean, right now, the target is trans people, because the right wing can gin up a lot of fear, because most people don't understand what transgender is. But if they want to really gin up the fear, all they got to do is put a picture of some of us up there, and that will scare the hell out of people who are vanilla. So one thing we can do by living authentically, we can let more vanilla people know that vanilla is not the only flavor. And when the gay and lesbian community started coming out of the closet in the 60s and 70s and 80s, the reason for that was, one, so you could live your life the way you want to live it.
Right.
But number two, you're visible. And by being visible, it's harder for people to discriminate against you, because everybody knows somebody who's gay. Everybody has an aunt or an uncle who's, a lesbian or a gay man, somebody who doesn't fit that mold. Well, they also don't know that they probably have an aunt or an uncle or somebody they know or a friend who's kinky as well. But the kinky people, it's easier to put it in the closet than it is your sexuality, I guess. They figure, well, they can do it on weekends and they don't have to worry about it.
And that's where we keep our toys anyway.
Yeah. But the problem with that is it may be a weekend for you, but for some people it's more than a weekend. And for some people it's part of their personality.
Mm-hmm.
For me, being kinky is part of who I am. It's part of my sexual identity. And it's very difficult for me to look at it any other way. I make the analogy that for years I was living in little boxes.
Yeah.
I had little boxes. One was a little box of, this is my family, and here's another little box that's my politics, and here's another little box that's my sexuality, and here's another little box that's my kink. And then I started having experiences in the dungeon where I'd have these scenes that were the only thing I could describe as spiritual. They transcended what we were doing. They became something greater. And that screwed up the boxes. And then I found out, well, some of my family members turned out to be kinky. Well, that screwed up the boxes too. And so it's easier to just dump everything in one big box that's you than it is to keep everything separate. And if you try to live life separate and partitioned that way, you end up being, you end up having a sort of a personality schizophrenia, which doesn't serve you very well. So I'm sounding like a psychologist, and I am not. Don't attribute that to me. But I really think it's important that people, do that and try to put everything together, because by unifying that, you have a much more abundant life than you do if you don't.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't have to keep worrying what stories you're telling people. It's like somebody who gets a resume that's a lie, but they got to keep lying about the resume. And then somebody walks in and says, "Oh, hey, Bob, you used to work at this." No, I didn't. I never worked there. What do you do? You get caught, and people get caught when they try to hide their kink, I think. So what I find interesting is more people I know who have kids, and as I'm an old fart, so I have a lot of friends who have kids and grandkids, and the number of those children who are kinky is not surprising. It's not zero. There are quite a few of them. Right. And I think a lot of it is inherited, and they didn't know their parents were kinky. They just realized it by one of them accidentally showed up at a party together.
Oops.
Oops. Yeah. Mom, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? So I think it may be genetic too. I think that may be part of it.
I actually saw a study on it that said there was a genetic component to kink being passed down from generation to generation. I don't remember any of the science on it, but there was a definite correlation.
Yeah, it's definitely there's something to that. The first time I got a hint of that was I used to be many years ago, was in a pansexual group, and one of the members, she had a keychain that had a little flogger on it. And she said, but my grandson keeps picking this thing up and hitting himself with it. You know the way we test toys?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like, yeah, watch him. He's going to grow up to be a kinky. And he did. So, and she never let anything on to him about anything. But that was, you could see it even then. So I think it's something that's lifelong.
I think also, too, if you have parents who are kinky, they're going to be sex positive, and therefore you don't have that shame instilled into you, so it is easier to embrace.
That could very well be. My parents were pretty sex positive, and I didn't know they were. I can't prove they were kinky, but my dad died when I was 18, the year I came out, and I was helping my mom put his books away because we had given he was a scientist, and we gave all his library to a local college. And we went through the books because we didn't want to give him, stuff that wasn't pertinent to the science. And I found an original copy of The Story of O.
Oh, wow.
I mean, the banned version, the Grove Press version.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found some other books that were like, this is interesting. And I never pressed my mom on it, but it was the 50s, and they had a very 1950s relationship. And I know that they had an active sex life because they told me, they didn't tell me what they did, but they were very sex positive in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, my dad died having sex with my mom.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So I guess, it was must have been vigorous.
If you gotta die doing something you love.
Exactly. And it's like, it was one of those things that she was always upset about it. I said, why should you?
Why?
Granted, it's upsetting.
Well, yeah.
But there are a lot worse ways to go.
Yeah.
Obviously, he enjoyed doing those things with you. So don't, yeah. Oh, my goodness. I'm thinking about what I know about my parents and different things, and I'm like, man, if I saw my mom at like a play party, I would probably be like, oh gosh, and have kittens or something or another like that. My dad, I'm sitting here going, yeah, no, he's comfortable. I've even taken him to a gay bar, and Dad was like, oh, hey, this is pretty cool. And I'm like, all right, Dad. And what was it? Introduced him to a very good friend of mine who was naked and changing, and Dad's like, hey, how's it going? Like, walked up and was like, let me shake your hand. You're a really cool guy. I'm like, all right, Dad. Yeah. I mean, that's one of those things for me with my dad, who's like, Dad's asked lots and lots of questions. And I'm going, I'm pretty certain you know more than what you're letting on, but you're just trying to feel out, like, what do I know?
Could very well be.
If we saw your mother at a play party, it would be because hell froze over.
Well, that's for damn sure.
I'm pretty sure she claims she's had sex the exact number of times as kids she has.
+3.
That's a very specific number, and I think I just want to leave that alone.
Yep.
May not want to explore that.
No. Well, her comment is she always tells me that she lights a candle next to her bed. This is really specific. Next to her bed when she wants to inform her husband that she's in the mood. So to inform my stepdad that she's in the mood for sex, and she's like, it's never been burned, and the sucker's collecting dust.
Yeah, we all have our signals.
Uh-huh.
Like when my boy and I are getting frisky, it's usually, do you want me to go brush my teeth? Yeah, okay. That means we're going to do something that's going to involve oral something, and you probably need to have a clean mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Just the concept of meeting parents at a play party just horrifies me. I was doing a workshop on interrogation, and it was a pretty edgy workshop. We warned everybody, a lot of triggers, and I'll warn you, there's a lot of triggers. The person who was going to be my bottom, she had a fantasy, and she wanted to do an interrogation by guards in a prison camp. And we're talking guards in a prison camp.
Ooh.
I mean, we're heavy duty. And so we set the whole thing up and we told everybody in the crowd, this is going to be a very heavy scene. This was her idea. And we're gonna do an interrogation scene and you can see where it goes and then we'll process it after. So we did the scene. I was in a lab coat with an armband on, and then I had somebody helping me, and we did this whole interrogation thing hardcore, and it really was a hot scene. And after it was over, we processed with everybody, and they got the point of it. That it takes a long time to set these things up.
Sure.
You can't just improvise. And as everybody's leaving, I'm walking out, and there's a woman in the back, and she's weeping, and I'm thinking, oh boy, we triggered her way beyond it. And I sat down with her and said, are you all right? She said, oh yeah, that was a beautiful scene. I've never seen my mom play that way.
Oh,
I fell into the seat and it was like, okay. And then I found her mom and said, you didn't tell me your daughter was going to be here. And she said, oh yeah, she wanted to see. Like, holy
shit. Holy shit.
So, that was even more authentic than I expected. So.
I was somewhere, and I don't remember where, and even if I didn't, I wouldn't name it by name, but there was a mother with her daughter and son-in-law that came together, intentionally together, and were very excited to learn about all the things. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hang out on the other side of the dungeon, because...
Yeah. I can see where that could make you a little uncomfortable. Well, I don't. I look back now and it's like I'm glad that she could do that. That she could get into that. It's. I'm sure there was an interesting conversation afterwards.
Well, I'm sure.
But the fact that she was so moved by it and thought it was great is like, it was a relief to me because I thought, oh boy, we've just sent somebody to a mental institution here.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And I usually don't do that intense a scene in a demo, but it was a request and it was at a conference where people expect things to be kind of edgy. And it was like, okay, you want edgy? I'll show you edgy. Be careful what you ask for.
Pulling back to on topic, and since you brought it up, how has your thoughts on this topic changed since the last election?
Not much.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. I've been an activist since the 70s, and various levels, everything from political activism to direct action, marching in the streets, kind of stuff. I think if we went into hiding, they win.
Mm-hmm.
And I say they. I mean, whoever this is,
the
I'm
oppressor.
Not even really sure. Yeah. I'm not even really sure who's in charge of the government. Looking at the latest cabinet picks, it's like a joke. Vince McMahon's wife as the head of the education department. What the fuck is that about?
Yes. Why is Linda McMahon? Why is she education?
Yeah, and then Dr. Oz is going to be in charge of Medicare and Medicaid.
Yeah,
Dr. friggin' Oz. A TV, we've just stepped into a reality show. But so while this comedy plays out, I'm not going to change my life. That's what they want. And I'm not going to do it. I may change my tune if they start putting people away. There's always the option of moving.
Sure.
But I don't want to. I mean, I helped to build this country and I don't think I'm going to give it up. Just because the oligarchs have control right now, I think that's going to be temporary. Or I hope. Who knows?
It also sounds as if, to be authentic, and even it isn't necessarily, I don't want to say like digging in your heels, but at the same time, it's also digging in your heels, but standing firm as to, no, I'm here. This is me. I'm still exploring who I am. And I'm not going to let certain powers that be totally and completely dictate that I need to stay in hiding when this is who I am. All of it, for good or for bad, as I change, as I move, as I grow, all of that stuff. Granted, I understand, some of those tunes may change just a little bit depending on if scary things happen. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well,
But-
and the truth is, not everybody could get out.
Right.
Right.
We can't all just leave.
Sure.
First of all, we all just leave. We just let them have it. That doesn't work for me. That runs against my instincts. My instincts are, I put a lot of work in this country.
Mm-hmm.
I put a lot of work in my life, and I think I deserve to be here. And if they are going to try to take it away from me, then I'm going to fight, and I'll do it in every means necessary that's legal. That's where I have to be. At first, my first impression was we need to get Canadian citizenship as fast as we can.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be a rush on that. So
I started getting ads for that in my Facebook feed the day after the election. Immigrate to Canada. Here's an easy way. Blah, blah, blah.
Well,
really,
Yeah, oh yeah.
it's difficult to immigrate to Canada, by the way.
mm-hmm.
So I've heard.
And and I'll be 75 next year. So I really am probably a little old for having a sellable skill up there. Unless somebody just needs somebody to fetch, I can do that. I've made curmudgeon a way of life. So.
I mean, I'm in a couple of I will call them rainbow support groups for parents of kids who are LGBTQIA and all of that. And one of the things that even prior to the current political standings, prior to it, there's more so now, there's, parents who are like, we're straight, but our kids are not. And we're trying to find safe places for everybody to be able to grow and explore and to be safe just in the US, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know kinky, but at the same time, this, how we're chatting is, falling under lots and lots of realms. Sorry, didn't mean to.
No, you're
grab
fine.
something.
I mean, like my Facebook banner says right now, first they came for the transgender community, and I spoke out immediately, even though I'm straight and cis, because I've read the rest of that fucking poem.
Yeah, I like that. Yes, exactly.
I mean, I am fortunate that I have a career where if somebody outed me as kinky, it would probably help my career as a sex therapist who deals mainly with the kink and trans and poly communities. I would not be hurt by that. But I will say, in the past few weeks since the election, the simple act of having a pronoun pin on my therapist cardigan was just a simple act of support. Now it feels like an open act of defiance.
Good. I hear that.
And, I'm not taking it off, but it was something, it was on my therapist cardigan, then I didn't really think about it. And now, every time I see it or hear it rattle, I'm like, yeah, fuck him and all that.
Again, this is about being authentic, right?
Yeah.
And that's hiding, going back in the closet. That for yourself, it may make you temporarily feel safer, but it won't. It'll make you feel more vulnerable because you'll have to be putting up a front and lying. The only reason that back in the 60s that gay people were thought as security risks is because people could out them.
Right.
Well, if you're already out, I'm not a security risk. What are you going to do? Tell them out? I already am. Somebody tell somebody I'm kinky. Good luck. That boat sailed. You can Google me and you'll find out I'm about as kinky as it gets. So
yeah, secrets have power, and if that's not a secret,
right,
I'm going to blackmail you and tell everybody you're kinky. Okay, I'll do it for free.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. It's you got to get comfortable being vulnerable, and that's part of it. I think if you're going to be authentic, you got to ditch those things that made you comfortable living in an inauthentic life to begin with. You got to shift your priorities and learn to trust your own intuition too, which is something I fight with on a regular basis. But it turns out my intuition is usually pretty good. First impressions sometimes are misleading, but maybe not. I don't what is it? If somebody tells you who they are, believe them.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good thing. I think the other thing, you're trying to live authentic. You need to focus on connections and not possessions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's tough because I collect shit. I always try to get stuff, because you get a lot of stuff, then you're going to be shielded from everything else. Or if I've got the world's biggest collection of floggers, therefore I must be great at BDSM. And I have a huge, ridiculous collection of floggers, and I use 2 of them. So,
so you're great at collecting floggers, is what you're telling me?
not anymore.
Oh, fair.
I'm just saying that shit's not going to happen anymore. I used to have a toy chest that when I'd go to parties, it was one of these pull-along tool chests.
As she's staring at mine right next to the couch, that is a pull-along tool chest.
And when you go to a party, what do you end up playing with? 1 or 2 things. Why not just take those 1 or 2 things that you want to play with that night with you, and that's it? And that's what I've decided to do. It simplifies things. It makes it easier. Instead of coming with all my electrical play stuff and all my bondage stuff and my CBT stuff. Well, if I want to do electrical, I'll bring the electrical.
Oh.
If I don't feel like doing electrical, I won't do it.
The only reason I'll disagree with that is because I have ADHD, and I will play with every single thing in there, even if it's only 2 hits. But I have completely different bags for electric and fire, and I will pick which bags we're bringing.
Well, good. At least you've narrowed it down to that. My house is filled with clutter. Both my boy and I are both pack rats and borderline hoarders. I envy the when I go into other people's houses and they have surfaces. They have places to put things. What is that about? So that's my goal is to become the next Marie Kondo, and have surfaces and everything neat and tidy.
But if it brings you
that probably
joy,
will never happen. But it
in learning different aspects of living your authentic self in your authentic life, what have you found that has best served you in order to continue to do that? Like always, even in like the hard spots or things like that.
One of the biggest things that helped me, and this is part of my story, so I'll open this up too. Mm-hmm. I'm a recovering addict, and when I got into recovery, this has been since 1986. So, I was doing a 12-step program, and that helped me a great deal. But one of the things they emphasize is principles before personalities.
Okay.
And so I try to remember that, and it keeps me balanced. It's easy to get caught up in one of the things I have trouble with is my ego. It goes both ways. Sometimes I think I'm all that in a bag of chips, and other times I have imposter syndrome. So it flips back and forth. But I try to keep both of those in check. And I think humility is part of it. I try to be humble. I try to not come off as the uber top of the world. I think that speaks more about a person when they have humility than when they're filled with braggadocio. Current president-elect as a case in point. He's got a lot of braggadocio, but there ain't nothing under the surface. That's important. And I think the other thing that has helped me live authentically is my spirituality. I'm not looking for my higher power to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. But it helps to be able to let some things go and say, that's something I can't control. What can I control? And look at the stuff that I can control. That serenity prayer really, really works for me, especially today. It's one of those things there are things you cannot change. And I'm not sure who wrote the Serenity Prayer. I want to say it was Dietrich Bonhoeffer, but I may be wrong. But it's a brilliant little piece of slogan-based spirituality. I don't like living life in bumper stickers, but that one works. So,
I mean, there's a reason why cliches become cliches, because they work, and then you overuse them, and then they become the cliche.
Yeah, I try to embrace my imperfections, because if I try to be perfect, it'll never happen. I can't tweak everything about my life. Life is messy, it's complex, and that's part of the joy of the scene is it's messy and complex. I mean, relationships are messy and complex, even though in a lot of kink relationships seem to be very simple on the surface. You're the slave, I'm the master. Yeah. Let's talk reality. There's a lot that goes into that. It's not simple. And that may be what attracts people to it, because it seems very simple. But when you get into it, that simplicity goes out the window and you realize this is just as messy and difficult as any kind of relationship. It's a relationship. That's all it is. Just another kind of relationship. You may be basing it and structuring it on a different model, but it's still a relationship, and relationships take work, just like life takes work. And I was at I'm going to dig into religion here for a minute.
Okay.
Don't get put off. I was at a Catholic funeral this weekend, and I was interested because listening to the number of prayers that were "Save us, save us, save us, save us, save us," and I'm thinking, it's like they want to get out of jail free card, and that's not my version of Christianity. Is Jesus set out a whole bunch of work for us to do, and we can either do the work or not. But if we want to create heaven on earth, we got to do the work. There's no get out of jail free card, and that's okay. I think that's fine. I'm not looking for a savior. I'm looking for guidance. That's what I look to my religion for is some guidance, and I like it with assurance. And the assurance is that here's this. It's laid out for me pretty clearly in many books, not just the Bible or the Talmud or whatever. There are a lot of books that lay this stuff out, and they pretty much all say the same thing. Although the Talmud is, I don't know if you've read Talmud or do much of that, but you probably do. Obviously, 40 chapters discussing what constitutes work on the Sabbath. That may be a little bit too nitpicky for me, but the basis of how to live a good life and how to make the world a better place, it's all there. And you can look at the Quran, you can look in Bhagavad Gita, you can look at all the sacred books. They're all basically saying the same thing. And it's how we interpret it. And so that's what I try to do. I try to live a good life. I try to embrace my imperfections. I try to be the best person that I can, and I try to make other people's lives a little better. That's part of the authenticity for me, because I think the more out we are, the easier it is for other people to be out. They say you model this for other people. When I was growing up, there was no book that showed how to be gay. There was nothing in the media or anything that would show you any glimpse as to what being gay meant. So we had to make it up as we went. I made it up as we went along, and I learned from other people. There's a whole generation now that has some great stuff, wonderful resources. But in the kink community, when I first got in the kink community, we were making it up as we went along. I got into leather in the 70s, and there were only a couple of books, and neither of them was really a how-to. The Leatherman's Handbook was not a handbook as in a how-to handbook. It was a handbook as in stroking handbook, I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
Larry Townsend said that. He said it was never meant to be a guide. It was meant to be hot stories. Now there's truth in there,
Mhm.
But, like in any story, there's truth. So that's the way I learned. I made it up as I went along. I learned from other people. And I think that's our responsibility, is to teach the next generation, and not teach them necessarily by, it's didactic, you have to do this and this and this, but teach them by the way we live. People will be attracted to the way you live rather than what you tell them to do. They will be attracted to your story. And I believe deeply in the power of stories and storytelling. They're sticky, they stick with you.
Oh, yeah.
I can learn more from a story. Somebody tells me a story about what happened on a scene. I learn as much from that as I could from any book. There's a reason Aesop told fables. There's a reason Jesus told stories. They stick. Parables have reason behind them. They're not just these mysterious things. They're there for a reason. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the way I believe in going forward. I got off on the real deep end there, didn't I? Sorry about that.
Oh no, you're fine.
You're fine.
I'm like, my thought on a couple of different things was, I always sat there and remember the folks that, just growing up, since I grew up Catholic, was, all right, we're going to party hard Saturday night and do all the things and be as slutty as what you want. And then Sunday it's, oh no, you need to get your ass up and go to church. And you need to go sit in the pew and pray for forgiveness for all that you did on Saturday because, oh my gosh. And, here, light a candle and pay your 50 cents for the candle that you just lit. And, well, you should be good. Like, but that's not, that's not how that's supposed to work, but okay.
Yeah.
And just thinking of all of that going, but are you truly being authentic with yourself if you are essentially living your best life on Saturday and then at the stroke of midnight, sometimes literally, not just figuratively,
yeah.
You have to turn into a pumpkin and oh my gosh, now I gotta be like this, hide who I am, tuck it all away, show up to try to be as pure as the dirty snow on Sunday in hopes that, nobody's going to know that really my authentic self is more Saturday night than Sunday morning. That just, sometimes that just floors me that, people are like that. And it
I understand.
Yeah.
It's funny. We have a leather pew at our church.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of started it. I encouraged people to come in their colors and their leathers when they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being that you need to show up. You need to be there.
Yeah.
You need to show people that there is diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was raised Jewish, and the concept of tikkun olam is very near and dear to me. And it's funny because I think that's what Jesus was, a Jew, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What was he teaching? He was teaching that. How can we repair the world? Duh. And so it made an easy transition for me. But I think that in our kink community, we can take that principle and apply it to our kink community, the way we interact with people. We can fix a lot of things with our actions. And by being authentic, I think is one of the easiest ways to start that, because then that gives a story out there that people can see. The 12-step community, they say it's by attraction, not by action. The people are attracted to it because they see it working.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, I want what they have.
Sure.
So I like to live the kind of life, like you said, you want to live your best life. I want to live the kind of life that people go, I want what he has.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. And, we have people come into the scene and they come in as sexual tourists at first, sort of, and they might find something that makes them stick. And when they stick, then they have to just make the decision as to how deep do I want to get into this? And it's not a contest. Mm-hmm. And that's the unfortunate thing. I think a lot of people look at kink as a contest, and that is a straight male thing. Everything is a contest. It's a cisgender, straight male, toxic masculinity. It's all I got to be alpha, whatever. I want to be the top dog on everything. You can't, and you're not going to be. And it doesn't matter. You don't have to know everything. You do what you do, and you're good at it, and you have fun with it, then you win, right? If there's a winner or a loser,
Right.
you win by just living a good life. And that's the way I look at kink, as long as I have fun and I don't hurt people in ways that they don't want to be hurt. I think that's the important thing.
I was going to say that just reminds me of conversations that I've had with a really good friend who he has just said he's had conversation of reconciling with himself on, what was it? Living his authentic life and being a Leatherman, and of also saying, yeah, I try to be a good activist. So I try to be, for him, a good Christian. And he's like, I don't put any of that aside. He's like, it took me years and years to actually figure that out. And somebody tried to come up and say something like, no, you just wear it on, you just wear your leather just because it makes you look good. And he's like, no, actually I wear it because it's a part of me. It's a part of my identity. It's a part of who I am. And he's like, I've embraced that. And I can wear it on Sunday, and I can wear it to dinner, and I can wear it when I'm having to be a parent to my adult children, and I can wear it to the bar, and I can wear it when I'm cruising, and it's just me. And he said he recognized that once he embraced all of that to be his authentic self, some of the depression and anxiety he was experiencing had went away. And that was a really
Funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a very telling thing that, hey, when you do that, you accept the parts of yourself, and he's like, I'm more at peace. Wow. Is that, I guess that's, one of those, is that one of those hard concepts to embrace?
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, but sometimes it takes a long time to get around to that. You gotta bump your head into a lot of things and try different things and find out, the easiest way is to just simply be and not try to, create anything fake. Just be who I am. And first you have to know who you are. That takes some introspection and self-reflection, but know that you're going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Who I was 40 years ago, I'm not today. That's for sure. I can't fit in any of those clothes.
Oh.
But, we have to be willing to change. I tell people this about leather. They always I get people all the time say, well, you were old guard. You need to tell me all about how the old guard did it. What do I need to do to be old guard? It's like, first of all, the term old guard, I first heard it as a put down. It was like, oh shit, they're just old guard. Don't worry about them. It was not used as it's something reverential. It was like, those are the old guys, are old guard. And quite frankly,
Wow.
There was no old guard monolithic tradition. Everybody had their own little kinks to it, their own twist.
Right.
And there were some general things, but there was no, there's no book that sells how to be old guard, even though there are a couple of books that claim to be, God forbid. And I think that's to try and fit yourself into that mold does yourself a disservice. I mean, leather, I tell people this, leather is organic.
Mm-hmm.
It came off a living animal and it evolved. And if we don't continue to evolve in leather, it's going to die. It's just going to be some dusty, Civil War reenactment. We're not going to be, we might as well be, trying to do some kind of Ren Fair reenactment. It's not going to be real. We have to make it our own. And that means whatever generation you're in, find what works for you, create rituals or whatever is fine, but don't try to pattern yourself completely on somebody else's kink. Take what you like and leave the rest. It doesn't have to be that way. It's difficult, and that's good. It shouldn't be easy, because if it's easy, you don't appreciate it. And I think that's important. When I got into the leather scene, and it took me weeks of hanging around at a leather bar before I ever got the nerve to talk to anybody. It took me a week or so of going and sitting in the parking lot before I even got the nerve to go in. But but once I finally talked to people, I realized there was not that much to be afraid of. And, it took a while to get to know people and to get into it. But I think that's good because it made it valuable to me.
Mm-hmm.
If it was too easy to get, it wouldn't be worth it. I wouldn't put the same value on it. And that's important.
Is this where the Council of Elders came in?
Oh, Lord, the Council of Elders. Okay, so there's a book called Old Guard Traditions and Protocol. And Guy Baldwin did a wonderful review on it, if you can find it.
Okay.
Because he basically said the whole thing's bullshit. There wasn't, in the book, the guy proposed, and I know this guy, I'm not going to mention his name, but
Sure.
I know him. And in his book, he claims that he was living in San Francisco and there was a council of elders who decided who got covered. First of all, the word covering, I never heard it until the 90s. So,
oh, geez.
It was a recent thing. Covering is more of a military thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it really wasn't used that much. You had a cap. The idea that there's a council that puts this, is going to decide all things leather is ludicrous. You can't get 3 gay men to decide on where to go to brunch, much less decide on all things leather. It's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bad idea, because then you stagnate and it falls apart. So the Council of Elders was a joke. And
Mm-hmm.
It is a joke.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't in that book. It was written as though it was real. But I decided that I was just going to have fun with it. So I created these pins and this logo that's basically looked like a chalice. But if you look at it close, it's 2 men's faces, 2 leathermen facing each other. And the motto is brotherhood and solidarity. If you look at brotherhood and solidarity, the first 2 letters are B and S. BS. If you see those pins out, I've given them out to a lot of people. And when you get the pin, you're told you can't tell anybody what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And if they ask you what it is, go, what pin? And I have found, amazingly, in a contest we were judging, some guy had a Council of Elders pin on his vest, and I didn't give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the judges said, "Oh, Council of Elders, what's that?" And he went on to a whole big story about how it was this and this and this.
Oh, geez.
It's like, obviously he found that pin,
Mm-hmm.
or he bought a vest that had it on it, or he stole it from somebody. And we were all the judges knew this. We're looking at each other like, just let him keep digging his grave,
So he didn't win.
No, he didn't win.
No.
I will tell you that the publisher of that book published a couple of my books. And he came to me at one time when I was doing mine. He said, if you wrote a book on Old Guard Protocol, the straight people would buy it like crazy. It was cynical. And I said, I'm not going to do that because, first of all, that's stupid. Why?
Mm-hmm.
And he found somebody to write it,
Mm-hmm. Oh, my gosh.
And I know people that believe it. And it's like,
Oh, yeah.
it's pity.
Join some Facebook groups. There are all sorts of people in there.
Same thing on FetLife. There's a whole string on FetLife about how to be Old Guard. I think it's kind of gone away, I hope. But
Let me ask this. For somebody who is wanting to be more authentic and come out of the kinky closet, what kind of things do they need to consider before they do so?
who you need to be out to. That's you need to consider how it's going to affect you. It could affect your life in a lot of ways. I mean, if you're a teacher in a grade school, probably coming out as kinky is a bad idea, at least to the school board,
Sure.
because there are going to be people that are going to be upset that somebody kinky is teaching their kids.
Mm-hmm.
They don't seem to be upset that, priests that molest children are, teaching their kids, but, hey.
We want you to discipline our kids. We don't want you to be into discipline, though.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you need to consider the audience, and consider what it means to you. You gotta make a list and figure out pluses and minuses. And it may be that in some cases it's fine to be completely out. In other cases it's not. I'm lucky in that I was never in the closet much, so I didn't have to worry about it. But I mean, there are people in relationships that where I see this used worse is in divorces. When a couple who's kinky gets a divorce and there are kids involved, one of the two will say, "Oh, he did all these terrible kinky things to me. He doesn't need the kids. I need the kids." If it's a bad divorce, and then they use their kink against one another.
Yeah,
I've been asked to testify as an expert witness in some of those things, and it's ugly. Had they been out to everybody before, it probably wouldn't have been that big a deal, because everyone would know. No, it's going to be an individual basis, and you're going to have to weigh what it means. How it's going to affect me, and that's the tough thing. There's no one answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry I didn't give you the simple answer.
No, I wasn't expecting a simple answer. I just want our listeners to, think about as many things as possible. Of course, I want to encourage everybody to be out and be kinky and be their authentic selves, but I understand you can't do that everywhere. Kinky is not a protected class. You absolutely can lose your job for being kinky no matter what field you work in.
And it's not a protected class, but neither are a lot of classes. So you just have to consider the audience and weigh what you're doing. And you may not need to. Some people do, some people don't. It just depends. People have recurring patterns and behaviors that hold them back from living authentically. And that's what you can do. You can change that. You can look at the aspects of your life that feel out of alignment. It doesn't mean necessarily that you have to be out to everybody, but that's going to help you. And trying to live a life that reflects your true values and your passions. That's what everybody wants to do, I guess. So philosophically, it's what all the philosophers say is how to live a good life. Well, the good life is this. Well, there is no one answer. Otherwise, there would not still be philosophers.
Sure.
This is true. This is really true.
Well, we've gotten a lot of good information on being your authentic, kinky self. Is there anything else you would like to share with us on this topic before we move into the part of the show we like to call Inside the Kinkster Studio?
I think I probably pontificated on this as much as I can.
Okay, fair enough. So now we come to the part of the show we like to call Inside the Kinkster Studio. This is the part of the show where we get to know you a little better in our own unique, irreverent, and slightly bratty way. Are you game?
Sure.
Okay.
Careful what you ask. You might get the answer.
I hope so.
What's your favorite toy in your toy bag?
Gosh, my favorite toy. It changes from time to time, but my go-to toy is I've got a couple of Heartwood floggers that Jeanette made for me, and I absolutely love them, and I've used them for about 35 years, and they still serve me very, very well.
That's awesome.
Very nice. What is your favorite smell?
My favorite smell?
Mm-hmm.
Balls. I know that sounds weird, but
No.
Pheromones that a pair of sweaty balls give off just does it for me. And something interesting I've discovered, I play with a lot of trans men, and their private parts smell like sweaty balls. They do not smell like typical female pheromone odor. They smell like men. That was one of those things that was really a surprise, and I was delighted by. Apparently, obviously, the chemistry of the testosterone in the body, but
What's something surprising you've learned about yourself in kink?
Phew. I think surprising was how early I got into it. And this was only made aware by one of my aunts told me this story, that when I was about 3 years old, my mom was hanging up clothes in the backyard because she liked the smell of sheets that dried outside. And I was playing with clothespins. And it was, putting them up like soldiers and stuff. And I began putting them on myself. And after a while, I was laughing because, the endorphins are going crazy, right?
Oh, yeah.
And my mom saw it. I heard this from my aunt because I don't remember. She told me. She said, your mom saw it. She went, oh, honey. And she pulled them all off. And I screamed bloody murder.
Oh, gosh.
And then began laughing. So I think, that may be one of the things I discovered is that I think I'd been kinky since I was born. So.
Gotcha. Starting tomorrow, your nipples are going to taste like Doritos. Cool Ranch or nacho cheese?
Oh, nacho cheese. Cool Ranch Doritos is a crime against nature.
Thank you.
No, it's wrong.
What's something that you know now that you wish you knew at the beginning of things?
Well, that I was going to live this long, I should take better care of myself. I think something I don't know that I didn't know when I first got in the scene. Or
Yeah.
Wow, that's a heavy question. I don't know.
She takes all the heavy, depressing questions.
There's so much. I know there's so much. I think what I know now that I didn't know when I got in the scene is there's no one way to do it. You have to forge your own path.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Who is your first ever celebrity crush?
Oh, a Buster Crab.
I don't know who that is.
See, I'm really old. Buster Crab was a Tarzan at one time, but he was also a thing. If you look up Buster Crab, he was a Olympic swimmer, and MGM picked him up and made him into a character they called Casper the Lion Boy. They were trying to go up against Tarzan. But I used to watch him when I was a kid in a TV show called Sergeant Gallant of the French Foreign Legion.
Mm-hmm.
And he was this handsome guy in the French Foreign Legion, and he had a young ward kid who hung out with him, or was his son. I don't know what their relationship was, but I wanted to be that boy. And what's interesting is later in life, I used to do live shows for amusement parks and attractions, and we did a whole show production for one of the Six Flags parks. And since Buster Crab played Flash Gordon, he was still alive, and I got him to do the voiceover part of the show.
Oh,
so I got to meet him in person.
That's super
awesome.
Which was awesome. The most amazing thing about him is he still looked good. I mean, he was 78, I think, when he did that show for us. The Six Flags wanted him to wear one of their T-shirts and take a picture. We were in the studio recording the sound, and he said sure. And he took off he just pulled his shirt off, and everyone went because he still had a six-pack. He was still cut,
Nice.
And this guy's in his 70s, and he looked great because he swam every day. But he was my first crush, and if you look him up on the internet, you can see why.
Yeah, we both just did that. He also apparently won a gold medal for swimming in the 1932 Olympics.
Yes, he was an Olympic swimmer.
Oh,
and a nice guy.
That's awesome. All right, you've just done a really heavy, hot, sweaty, wonderful scene. Now it's time for a snack. What's your go-to sandwich?
Sandwich?
Yeah.
After a scene?
Uh-huh.
Usually it's not a sandwich. Usually it's some salty snack.
Okay, fair.
If somebody said, "Can I make you a sandwich?" I'd say, "Give me a lox and bagel," because it's got the protein, it's got the It's got the cream cheese, and it's got, capers and some onions, a little bit of everything.
Nice. That'll work.
It's a perfect sandwich. How can you go wrong with it?
See, there you
So
go.
my follow-up to that is a hot dog a sandwich?
Good question. If you say a hot dog is a sandwich, then what about a corny dog? It's got breading around it. Is that a sandwich? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if hot dog. I think a hot dog is a sandwich, actually. It's just a long, skinny one.
All right, what's the most useless skill you possess?
The most useless skill I possess?
Uh-huh.
Wow. There's so many. Okay. One of them is I can operate a 35 millimeter film camera. When's the last time you saw something shot on film?
15 years ago when I took my own pictures.
No, I'm in movie.
Oh, that one, movie camera. Oh, I'm so sorry. Movie camera. Oh, gosh. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No.
When's the last time I saw the film being played, or when's the last time I saw the film?
Oh, you do have the film.
Because I do have 35 millimeter film sitting on the top of my bookcase. It is actually movie memorabilia. Have you ever seen the movie Soylent Green?
Yes.
So, you know how when they're outside, like everything is kind of tinted green?
Yep.
So the way they did that special effect is they shot it normally, and then when went to make prints, they ran it against green tinted film. I own that green tinted film.
You've got the optical printer piece. That's interesting. I was in that business for a while, not in the film business.
Oh,
and I love movie memorabilia. In fact, I still have an Aeroflex 16 millimeter camera.
Oh, wow.
Which I don't know what I'm going to do with, but one of these days I'll probably sell it.
Next question. What soap do you dislike the most and why?
What soap?
Yep.
The Guiding Light, because it's I'm sorry.
Nope, that one sucked. I'm with you. That one sucked.
Yeah.
There's a reason why it's off air now.
I dislike Irish Spring. It doesn't smell Irish at all. Not any of the Irish people I know. So I don't like it, and it dries your skin out.
What is the strangest purchase you've ever made?
Wow. There have been so many. Strangest purchase. I think probably we were getting ready to shoot. This is back when I was doing film stuff. We're getting ready to shoot an instructional film for how to have safe sex, and we needed to have fake semen. So me and my prop person went to the store, and we bought condensed milk and corn syrup and 3 boxes of condoms. That was the weirdest checkout ever.
All right, so now inquiring minds want to know, does condensed milk and cornstarch or corn syrup and mixed together actually look like semen for film?
Yes, it does. It looks frighteningly like semen. Yeah. In fact, they used to use something similar to that before they came out with all the, now they have all these lubes that look like semen. They used to use that for money shots when the star was not performing. You put that in a ear syringe.
Oh, that is fantastic!
It makes facials a lot more tasty, depending on your preference. But yeah.
Well, I learned something new today. The more you know, shooting star. Ba-doo!
Like, I kind of want to use that for something, just for science, just because I can.
We're going to load up some super soakers with
Well, now there's a company called Money Shot that makes fake semen that's body safe, so you don't have to worry about, yeast infections and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
but it's not as tasty.
No. That would be the downside. Oh, good to know.
So next question. If you could fight any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Fight?
Fist fight.
Oh, geez, I'm terrible at that. Hold on. Oh. Boy, this is tough. I'm trying to think some historical figure that I really don't like, but that I figure I got a chance at winning. There's so many that I don't like, but the chance of winning would probably be none. Oh, go for the big one, Hitler. Yeah.
Okay, that works.
Fair enough. Okay, time for the reverse Uno card. You get to ask us one question, but the condition is you have to be the first one to ask the question. Nobody else can have asked this question previously.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I'm asking your persona as rabbi.
Okay.
Is it okay to flog someone on the Sabbath?
I am thinking about this. So what was it? Episode 15, we had Laura Antonou on, and the topic was kinky schminky Jewish perspectives on that thing we do. And I'm trying to think of what her answer was. Well, overall, the Jewish perspective on sex is it's a mitzvah. You should do things that make you and your partner happy. So I am going to say yes, it is.
You're also not supposed to work on the Sabbath, so.
So no service topping on the Sabbath?
Hey, if I can't even press a button in an elevator in New York, then I think that'll work. I can consider that a mitzvah. I had never ridden on a Sabbath elevator till I was in New York several years ago, and we were at a hotel off Times Square. It was Saturday, and we go up to our room, and it stops on every floor.
Oh,
and I'm going, what is going on? And I realized, it's the Sabbath.
Oh.
Because pushing a button
Would be considered work.
Yeah. Which is why the automatic light switch came about. The motion sensor.
Yeah.
Great Jewish invention.
Huh.
So you don't have to do work on the Sabbath, but I don't have to walk around in the dark.
That's fair.
All right, time for our final two favorite questions.
What's your favorite swear word?
Oh my God. What's my goat? It'll either be fuck or gewalt. The two. I default to Yiddish sometimes,
Understandable. So my final question, and my favorite question to ask, if you had to have sex with one Muppet, which Muppet would it be and why?
Oh, it would be Dr. What's his name? The one with the band.
Dr. Teeth?
Dr. Teeth, yes. Dr. Teeth, because he's wild, and he would probably be a really, really crazy fuck.
Okay. If somebody wants to contact you or follow you on social media, what's the best way to do that?
You can just Google me and find me everywhere, but I'm on Facebook. That's Hardy Haberman, just my real name, and I'm Hardy H on FetLife, and I'm on Blue Sky as Hardy Haberman and Blue Sky. Anyway, if you look me up on Blue Sky, I'm on there too.
Okay, and I will post links to those in the show notes. But thank you very much for coming on the show. You've been a great guest. You've
Thank you.
educated us very much on how to live authentically in a vanilla world. For our listeners, upcoming synagogue and in-person virtual classes. We have Electric Mayhem 1 and 2 for the Dr. Teeth fan. One is Violet Wand, one is Electroplay without the Violet Wand. Bratty Daddies and Body drumming all coming up. Check out our website for more details on each of those classes. But that's it. That's our show. Say goodnight, little bit.
Good night, little bit.
Follow us on Facebook, FetLife, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube as Synagogue BDSM, and on Instagram and TikTok as Synagogue Kink. If you enjoyed or learned something from this podcast, consider making a donation via PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, Patreon, or Ko-fi. Username Synagogue, or find those links to all of those on our website, synagoguebdsm.com. Remember, that's synagogue with an I. Also on the website, links to past episodes, upcoming classes, book us as educators, shop our store, and more.
Synagogue hosts and guests are subject matter experts but are not the expert. We believe that, outside of violating consent, there is no wrong way to do kink, except to think your way is the only way. This show is presented from a RAC, risk-aware consensual kink point of view, and not SSC, safe, sane, consensual, because every individual's definition of safe is different based on their own risk profile. The use of the word safe on this show fits our definition of safe, and that does not have to be your definition. Opinions expressed by guests on the show are those of the person expressing the opinion, not of the show.
Just a reminder, we try to make our content as inclusive as possible, regardless of gender, orientation, role in the lifestyle, etc. But we do inherently speak from our own point of view. For the most part, substitute our identity with your own to make it work. We want to know when we make a mistake, so we can learn and grow from those mistakes. So if you feel like we did say something that is genuinely offensive, we encourage you to let us know. Reach out to us with your questions, comments, or concerns via our website or call us at 469-269-0403.
Brought to you today by the letters and the number.
San Diego High School Football Room!